This is what nature does if she's left alone for 50 million years. She produces a rainforest, the most complex and diverse ecosystem on Earth. While covering only 4% of the Earth's land surface, the Amazon rainforest is home to nearly half of the world's plant and animal species. This vast forest stabilizes the global climate, moderating temperatures, absorbing rainfall, and releasing vital currents of moisture into the air. It is said that the forest gives up her secrets slowly and only to those who come to her in reverence and respect. The indigenous people of the tropical forest have evolved a rich and complex relationship with the natural world. For thousands of years, these people have lived as an integral thread in this miraculous and fragile weave of life.
Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining us for this historic day, this historic gathering, the Amazon Climate Forum. My name is Leila Salazar Lopez, and I am honored to be one of your co-hosts today. I'm the executive director of Amazon Watch, and for the last 25 years, we've worked to protect and defend the Amazon and our climate in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. Allow me to introduce to you my co-moderator, Marcelo Furtado, board member of Conectas Human Rights. Hola, Marcelo.
Leila, tudo bem? Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. And it was great to hear this introduction video with Morgan reminding us that Amazonia is urban, is technology, is culture, is science, it's nature, and it's indigenous. And Amazonia is one. So I hope we get a lot of people here today engaged to help us move this agenda forward and change the reality here.
Obrigada, Marcelo. We'll be hearing a little bit more from, a lot more from Marcelo in just a moment. And yes, as Marcelo mentioned, thank you, Morgan Freeman. Your voice is unforgettable, and we just thank you for lending your voice and your support to the call from the Amazon, the call of the forests, the call of the indigenous people, the forest people, all of biodiversity, which is very much under threat right now. And that's why we're here today. We're here in response to that call. We're here to connect the North and the South, all of us who care deeply about the Amazon rainforest, human rights, and our future. And we're here. I want to especially welcome U.S. policymakers who are here today. We are very grateful that you're joining us to hear the call from the forest and hear the proposals from the peoples of the Amazon. We are grateful that the Biden administration is open to hearing the voices of the people, because this is the call. The call is for permanent protection of the Amazon rainforest. And Indigenous and local peoples of the Amazon have solutions to protecting the forests. And we are here in solidarity with them. We've come together in that spirit of collaboration with frontline communities, with regional and international allies to develop and propose an Amazon Life Plan. And we have an Amazon Life Plan, and we have an Amazon Climate Platform for the Biden administration to consider in its climate strategy. We're hopeful that this conversation, the presentations and the conversations today, will guide the Biden administration in making decisions that show leadership once again for the United States and the world so that we can protect the world's largest and most biodiverse tropical rainforest. And we're going to be hearing from lots of people today. We're going to be hearing from policymakers. We're going to be hearing from scientists. We're going to be hearing from academics. We're going to be hearing from indigenous leaders, regional leaders. We're going to be hearing from people of faith. We're going to be hearing from youth. And we're going to be hearing from artists. We have a diverse group of people here to show support for the Amazon Life Plan and the Amazon Climate Platform. And I want to refer you to the Amazon Climate Platform at the amazonclimateplatform.org. And really, you can see some of our proposals here in the Amazon Climate Platform to permanently protect the Amazon rainforest, to ensure that supply chains are free from deforestation and fossil fuels, that there are financial regulations on those companies and investors that are complicit in the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. We want US policy to be enforced to protect the Amazon and uphold the rights of indigenous peoples. And we have goals for this forum. One, as I've already mentioned, to garner that support for this 100-day action plan, the climate platform, and the Amazon Life Plan with policymakers to advocate for these plans within the Biden administration. We need all of your support, not only policymakers, but all of civil society who is here with us today. We're here to amplify the voices of the Amazonian peoples. We're here to uplift indigenous rights, human rights, and climate justice. And we're here also to expand a global civil society alliance to work to protect and defend the Amazon and its peoples. Lastly, before I turn it over to Marcelo, I just want to say that you're in for such a treat with so much participation from all over the global north and south. And we are going to be hearing panels on Amazon policy, on human rights and defending the defenders, and also on COVID-19. And so at this moment, I want to turn it over to Marcelo, who can tell us a little bit more about the situation in Brazil and what happened this morning.
Thank you, Leila. And indeed, we have representatives from the Congress, representatives from civil society, from indigenous people, artists. We have a treat for everybody that is with us here today. I think what is important to set here is that, of course, the Amazon is in 9 countries, but 60% of it is in Brazil. So we have a huge responsibility over the fate of the Amazon. And there has been a lot of movement in the Brazilian society in order to foster its preservation and in order to foster the protection of its culture, its people, and its forests. There has been letters from all over and all different groups. We have letters from academia, we have letters from civil society, we have letters from business, we have letters from governors very recently, all stating both to the president of Brazil as well as to President Biden, the need to have ambition, but the ambition should come with justice and should come with protection, and looking at the Amazon as a key element to save the climate crisis. Because we all know without the Amazon, there is no solution to the climate crisis. So I'm very happy to also tell you that this, in today's event, we'll have Congressman Faleiros and Congresswoman Joênia Wapichana telling us about the event that happened this morning in the Brazilian Congress with 62 members of Congress signing a manifesto and another almost 70 organizations that organized it, all directed in a letter to President Biden asking exactly those points, which is, yes, Brazil wants investment, and I think all Amazonian countries want, but that investment has to be an investment that is policy-wide, looking into justice, health, economics, environment, and not only one single view. The other thing is that everyone wants that everybody that is a stakeholder on this has a seat on the table. It has to be an inclusive process. So as much as academia should be heard because of science, business should be heard, civil society should be heard, indigenous people should be heard, everyone should have a place on the table. It is about carbon, of course. We have this incredible carbon sink paper that the forest provides, but it's not only carbon, right? We also have to talk about climate justice, and we also have to talk about nature and nature services. Finally, I think it's important to say that any country that wants to receive investments should demonstrate the ability to show concrete action. And I think that's where the payment after performance comes in so importantly. So there will be a lot of conversation here. We're very thankful for this forum, for the audience, and for the openness and the bridge between what's happening in Brazil and in the Amazon region with what's happening in the US, and particularly the very important climate summit happening at the April 22nd and 23rd.
All right, so thank you, Marcelo. So once again, welcome everyone. We're just about to get started with our first speaker. As I mentioned, we have 3 live panels on Amazon policy or US policy towards the Amazon, human rights, and COVID-19. But first, we're going to be hearing from the youth. And our first speaker, we're so grateful that you could join us. I have the honor of introducing Alexandria Villaseñor. She is a youth climate activist and the founder of Uprising International. Welcome, Alexandria.
Hi, hello everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I want to first get started with talking about how in 2018, 25 Colombian children filed a lawsuit in Colombia's Supreme Court, alleging the destruction of the Amazon rainforest was violating the intergenerational compact society has to preserve our planet and all of its natural resources for future generations. Youth have a right to a healthy environment, life, good health, food, and water. These youth recognize that the accelerating deforestation and extraction of natural resources from the Amazon jeopardized their future, and in 2019, they won. Youth are calling on adults to protect, conserve, maintain, and restore the Amazon rainforest. Yet despite the ruling the children received on their lawsuit, over 500,000 hectares of the Amazon were felled in 2019 and 2020. Recent scientific studies show us that the damage done to the Amazon rainforest, activities like logging, dam building, and ranching have disrupted the delicate ecosystem of the Amazon. There are now more floods and droughts occurring in what was once a fairly stable ecosystem. We need the Amazon to capture and store all the carbon in our atmosphere. Unfortunately, some scientists believe that we've crossed a tipping point in the Amazon, and its damaged ecosystem is now contributing to climate change. It is unacceptable to make future generations, my generation, pay for this destruction. The costs to my generation are greater than money. The current climate and the climate of the future has been damaged. Biodiversity and ecosystems have been lost. Youth have lost their lives and livelihoods because they've all been traded away for the profits of a few. However, in the face of all of this hardship, I believe that there is hope. It's obvious we're at a critical point in history where we can make a different choice and act differently to support future generations. We can end deforestation, protect wildlife, and stop resource extraction before the danger to us becomes even greater than it already is. Most importantly, we can protect and defend the rights of Indigenous peoples and traditional local communities, where the vast wealth of knowledge about the Amazon rainforest is held. Our futures depend on each other. Humanity and the planet are on a precipice. We can choose further exploitation and destruction of the natural resources that support us all, or we can act in time to save our climate and the life-giving aspects of our precious Earth. The youth are demanding that we make the right choice. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Alexandria. And thank you for all of your work to organize the Youth Climate Strike in September 2019, which inspired us all. And thank you again. And now we are going to turn it over to Bishop McElroy from San Diego.
It is a pleasure to be with you today, Alexandria. Your presentation points to the future for all of us, and to the stakes for all of us and for coming generations. So thank you particularly. You make me think back to when I was actually in grammar school. When I was in grammar school in California many years ago, we learned about the Amazon in depth as a place of richness and beauty and biodiversity. We learned all that. But we also were taught that the Amazon was so big, it was basically indestructible. The image we had was the Amazon was so vast, it sustained itself and could not be harmed. And now we live in an era in which the falseness of that myth of indestructibility, of the sheer magnitude of the Amazon, of its richness and strength. And it is an example for us of the whole world. It is an example of how we must face all of the challenges to creation that we come across now. In the United States, we think of, when we hear the good life, we think of having a great deal of money, being able to do what you want, not having responsibilities. But among many of the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, the good life is a wholly different term. It speaks of one being one with nature, one with other communities around you, of a harmony. And that's basically the conversion that Pope Francis talks about, that we have to have. We have to seek the good life in that sense here in the United States and throughout the world. And part of that is going to be a conversion process. And the religious communities and the cultural communities of the Amazon and in the United States have a joint and awesome responsibility to help with the conversion of the people, particularly here where I'm in the United States, to get rid of the disinformation, especially propounded by the extractive industries, and how that has clouded the reality about the Amazon and, in fact, about climate in general. We have to be part of a discussion and a conversion that touches upon the spirituality of creation. And that means linking together the justice and the climate and the whole of the richness and the cultural communities in the Amazon and in the United States. And we must have a profound sense of interconnectedness, a profound sense which tells us not globalization, but true interconnectedness, which leads us to understand, and I say this for policymakers particularly, that if we help create with the peoples of the Amazon a future in the Amazon that is strengthened by these principles, then we are serving everyone in the world and trying to recreate the creation God has given to us, to sustain it and keep it going in a very healthy way. Part of that's going to be another part of conversion, which is the call to sacrifice. We are not in the United States, in Brazil, throughout Latin America, all of the region of the Amazon, all of the American continents, we are not going to be able to succeed without acknowledging the need to sacrifice. And that has to be part of our conversion too. We have to give up some of the things we have become used to secure our future, your future, Alexandria, and the future of coming generations, and the beauties of our planet, which, as Pope Francis calls, is our common home. And so I would ask all of the policymakers to really consider what are the implications of interconnectedness on the questions of the Amazon. It is not simply that the Amazon is such a vast warehouse to provide strength and richness and fertility and biodiversity for the future of our planet. It is also that the culture and the peoples of the Amazons provide a perspective we need to understand, because many elements of that perspective of culture and faith and spirituality are going to be the pathway that we have to travel in the United States if we are truly to serve and maintain and recreate our common home that God has given to us, that we have so shamefully defaced. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop McElroy, for your words of wisdom. And we're going to hear from more people of faith, science, and also the investor community in this next segment of videos. And then we're going to start the first panel.
The Amazon is the largest watershed in the world, with an immense natural and cultural wealth, value, and diversity. Its legal boundaries stretch across the territory of 8 countries: Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, and Venezuela. Most of this area is tropical rainforest, and the rest is composed of an array of ecosystems, including the tropical highlands in the Andean Cordillera and its cloud forests. The Amazon is the greatest repository of biodiversity in the world, harboring more than 10% of all the species of plants and animals on Earth. It is also home to 35 million humans, including more than 1 million indigenous peoples with their own identities, languages, and management practices. The Amazon provides significant and multiple environmental services to the Amazonian countries and to the world, including the critical role it plays in the global water, energy, and carbon cycles. The Amazon is also a critical buffer against climate change, absorbing between 13 and 20% of the carbon captured annually by the world's forest. Sadly, the Amazon is facing many threats: land use change, deforestation, soil degradation, extractive mining, oil spills, uncontrollable fires, and climate change. The Amazon is nearing a tipping point and threatened with extinction. Its agony poses a dramatic threat to human well-being, not just in the Amazon, but in the whole world. In this context, in September 2019, convened by the UN Secretary General, we, a group of Amazon scientists and environmental practitioners, united to form the Science Panel for the Amazon. The main goal of this panel is to provide a comprehensive, objective, open, and transparent platform to systematize information for a rigorous scientific assessment of the state of the Amazon ecosystems, propose solutions to reach sustainability, and provide a vision for the improvements of well-being of the Amazon inhabitants. Based on this information, the panel is creating a scientific report that examines trends and implications for long-term well-being of the region. Initially, we started with 60 Amazon scientists, and currently we are more than 200 scientists, practitioners, and local leaders working on the report, and more than 100 reviewers. We're extremely proud of this effort, and we hope that the initiative and the report will reach a diverse audience, including policymakers, government agencies, strategic leaders, especially within the Amazon, but also from other regions. The prospect of the Biden administration contributing to this initiative to protect the Amazon is extremely encouraging. We applaud this effort and we offer our support and all the information that we have assembled and analyzed as a group. For this support to be meaningful, we need for the problems of the Amazon to be analyzed and dealt with from a local, regional, and global perspective. No one country can save the Amazon by itself. We need transnational agreements and international cooperation to protect, preserve, and manage this biome, its ecological functions, and ecosystem services for our existence and that of future generations. We, members of the Science Panel for the Amazon, appeal to the reason and conscience of humankind. The Amazon is at grave risk of destruction, and with it, the well-being of our generation and the generations to come.
Hi, I'm Carl Burkhardt from One Earth and was invited to give you a quick briefing on the Global Safety Net. I was one of the co-authors on the paper published last year in Science Advances. The Global Safety Net was the first peer-reviewed paper that documents the full spatial extent of all remaining natural lands that play an important role in biodiversity and carbon storage. The paper shows that if we want to maximize our chances of reversing the extinction crisis and rebalancing our global climate system, 50% of the Earth's lands need to be recognized of vital importance for the preservation of life on our planet, and these areas need to be funded accordingly for their conservation value. 35 to 40% of the land in the Global Safety Net represents indigenous territories. Therefore, when we talk about achieving success in the UN post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, we must go much farther than a discussion about inclusion. If we are to achieve the goals of the Convention, we need an indigenous-led conservation agenda, which centers indigenous land tenure rights as a means to achieve conservation outcomes and forbids land grabs. The Amazon is arguably the most important subrealm on Earth. You may have seen the slew of extreme headlines a few weeks ago about the Amazon collapsing. This is not correct. The Amazon forests are not a contributor to climate change. In fact, they absorb 10 to 15% of all human-caused carbon emissions every single year. The correct statement is that poor land use policies are now contributing significantly more carbon to the atmosphere than the forests in the region are able to absorb. We need to preserve and protect every square inch of the Amazon. According to the Global Safety Net, 85% of the Amazon region is identified as vitally important for the conservation of biodiversity. At least 30% of these lands are indigenous. Although it's impossible to put a dollar value on nature, one approach that harmonizes the contribution of ecosystems to the global economy clearly shows the Amazon as one of the most important regions in the world. In this model, the Amazon provides an estimated 9.3 trillion in value each year. That's 6 times more than the combined national debt of all the Amazonian countries. We need to start thinking about ecological debt. The fact that northern countries most responsible for climate change and biodiversity loss are reliant upon southern countries to maintain their natural ecosystems. But instead of paying them to do so, they are charging them interest. We need to reverse this dynamic.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, et merci de votre invitation. Malheureusement, je ne peux pas être présent parmi vous en direct, mais je vous promets qu'une prochaine fois, on pourra se voir tous en présentiel. Je suis donc députée européenne et je suis membre de la commission développement et chargée des peuples autochtones. Alors pour moi, c'est un sujet très important parce que on voit qu'il y a un grand nombre de violations de l'environnement et des droits humains dans le monde qui sont dues à quoi? Qui sont dues, à l'exploitation des ressources naturelles. Que ça soit l'agro-business qui participe à l'accaparement des terres, que ça soit l'exploitation minière, que ça soit l'utilisation des pesticides. Et ça, vous savez que c'est un gros problème, et notamment au Brésil, où on exporte des pesticides qui sont interdits à l'Union européenne, mais qui sont utilisés au niveau du Brésil. Et surtout, c'est qu'on s'aperçoit que ça soit au Brésil ou dans d'autres pays, eh bien, ce sont les défenseurs de l'environnement qui sont éliminés parce qu'ils défendent les droits humains et ils défendent l'environnement. Le souci qu'on a au niveau de l'Union européenne, c'est la cohérence entre les valeurs de l'Union européenne, ce qu'on défend à la fois sur le climat et donc la réduction des gaz à effet de serre, mais aussi de limiter la déforestation et sauvegarder la biodiversité dans son sens le plus large. Et dans la biodiversité, j'y mets les peuples autochtones, puisque toutes les études montrent que ce sont les peuples autochtones qui protègent le mieux la biodiversité. Et donc, il faut absolument les intégrer dans la politique européenne. Or, à l'heure actuelle, on voit qu'ils sont agressés à tous les niveaux. D'une part, ils sont agressés parce qu'il y a des désastres environnementaux qui sont dus à ce que je vous ai dit tout à l'heure, mais aussi il y a la pandémie du Covid et ils ont en quelque sorte une double peine. C'est pour ça que j'avais saisi le commissaire qui est chargé de l'aide humanitaire, M. Lénard Chiche, pour qu'il apporte une aide d'urgence pour aider ces communautés à vivre. Et notamment, une somme de 900 000 € a été dégagée et a aidé à la fois les communautés du Brésil, du Pérou et de la Colombie. Mais ceci, ça a été une aide d'urgence, mais ce n'est pas la solution miracle. La solution, c'est de s'attaquer à la source du problème. Et pour s'attaquer à la source du problème, il y a une autre chose où l'Europe est responsable, c'est les accords de libre-échange. On ne peut pas accepter à l'heure actuelle les accords qui lient l'Union européenne et le Mercosur. Pourquoi? Parce que dans ces accords-là, il y aura pratiquement plus de droits de douane au niveau des produits agricoles. Et ça va entraîner justement, que ça soit sur les produits agricoles, les céréales, mais que ça soit aussi sur la viande, il va y avoir une déforestation encore plus importante, un accaparement des terres de façon encore plus importante, et une utilisation à la fois des OGM et aussi des pesticides qui sont en train de tuer les agriculteurs et même les communautés à petit feu. Donc, il faut refuser, et nous, on fait tout au niveau du Parlement européen pour que on ne ratifie pas cet accord entre l'Union européenne et le Mercosur. Il en va, si vous voulez, à la fois de la survie des gens, de la sauvegarde de la biodiversité et de l'avenir de la planète. Donc on fera tout au niveau du Parlement européen pour faire en sorte à ce que les droits fondamentaux des peuples autochtones, que la responsabilité des entreprises, qu'elles soient européennes ou qu'elles soient internationales, puissent être sanctionnées si elles attaquent le moindre des cheveux des peuples autochtones. Et donc on fera tout pour justement qu'il y ait une cohérence dans notre politique et qu'on soit tous solidaires pour à la fois défendre la biodiversité mais aussi la planète. Merci et bonne réunion.
Hello, everybody. What a nice day it is. My name is Jonah Whitcamper. I lead the Amazon Investor Coalition. We're online at amazoninvestor.org. We are a network of investors, donors, and allies that want to advance forest-friendly economic development and the rule of law across the Amazon region of South America in partnership with local stakeholders. President Biden, we believe that the forest is worth more alive and standing than cut and burned. The financial products, however, that reflect such wisdom did not exist until recently. Please develop a relationship with Brazil that catalyzes local wealth creation in the Amazon region by facilitating a transition from cattle to agroforestry. Cattle can earn farmers $250 per hectare per year, while cocoa can earn $2,000, acai $3,000, rubber $3,500. These new forest gardens will restore transpiration rates and avert droughts caused by the Amazon deforestation tipping point. Policies, however, that favor cattle expansion in low employment scenarios increase inequality and limit bottom of the pyramid types of wealth creation that agroforestry offers. Please help scale strategies in the US and around the world that support payments for ecosystem services to foster the development of new conservation finance strategies in Brazil that help local populations value natural resource sustainability over alternatives. Also, a fundamental point of the process is land regularization and permanent protection reserves. With land tenure insecurity, squatters and farmers are both motivated towards deforestation. Property rights secure investment and incentivize the kinds of long-term planning that agroforestry requires. But land regularization without pressure for permanent protection reserves can have unintended consequences and harm frontier forests. Finally, President Biden, just as you supported consensus building in the US, support the same for Brazil. For only as a community with united vision can they overcome the divisions that have come before them. Thank you.
Hello again, and thank you all for your powerful words. Before we move into the first live panel with policymakers and indigenous leaders from Brazil, we are going to hear from one of our longtime friends and allies in the artist community, Ed Begley Jr., and we're going to hear from legendary Chief Hauni, Kayapo leader, who has guided all of us to unite and collaborate to protect the Amazon that is under immense threat.
Hello, I'm Ed Begley, and it's an honor to join this gathering of leaders coming together to provide a much-needed roadmap for the new Biden-Harris administration as they craft the strategy to protect the Amazon rainforest. This is the first time that the Amazon rainforest has been so central to the relationship between Brazil and the United States. And as Biden campaigned on his promise to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, he also vowed that stopping the destruction of the Amazon rainforest would become a centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy and categorize the crisis as both environmental and one of national security. On January 27th, President Biden issued his executive order acknowledging this urgent moment to pursue action, stating that to avoid the most catastrophic impacts of the climate crisis, both at home and abroad, we must seize the opportunity that tackling climate change presents. And so the administration has challenged all of us to meet this moment with them. So we challenge the administration to make sure that all policies implemented to protect the Amazon be made in collaboration with indigenous leadership, local communities, and scientists. The administration should also ensure the safety and defense of forest guardians who face deadly threats in the Amazon. Human rights and environmental justice must be central to the solutions. This is a moment we've been waiting for to make the difference for the Amazon. Now is the time. Thank you.
Iye ba ne ye ika beni mono ya marote ika peri. Bene Julia ka bene Julia e ni na roba. Ika ben ma. Ba ne me ya ka kute me yo fuka ma ro ne kute piem ro ke ma o maroana. Kute keno mon ke ma o maroan ba ale gamne pi jo o yo mur kute kelen arab ne me be kaya po of tara me te ika ben ko ami man ikon kango ba jo ko kango Umeng ma moya me bi ni peile ge me ku ba ka ki ka jin ba ma amu bo mo ma ma ne yo yu be ne jo lu ya ni ji ma ki ye be ni ji le are ka me ko di ni ji ma ji be ne rom ni ta ne ya ba ma e bi ja ne ka mi ya mai ka be ya ne o yu lu ke te ba ya ba bu ka ya Ima reng nonom, ima kukri le nonom ma, amele be nuri, re yo mo, ari benya jolo ka tati mo, ka benya re yo mo, benya jolo yang puji le iku pa ka benya tu iku dah ke, ba kami bagi ker ku benya ma ne, geja ka mai ika benya ma, geja mai. Pundu le wa boile te ma e ka kati ada ni rom ni ka pena le ba ku ma ke jaga ku ma ne ke ko ba mi maria pe ne me yo ba me mam ne me yo fuka me mam ne ba i ma ke ku ma ne ge ngo ale no ka eke ge ba ale kam no ita jo ma no ka je ba ma ika ben ya ne ika ben yane kube me kinja me umari mejo ye ni magaja me puka me ba kume gole kati bai ma me kute pin kora mo mai magin ke me kute ken ka ro bai magin ke kumne are ne me ba ya me bu kuni ni kota yom ke ja me oi te we me yo fuka kare ka me mo o pin o mon ken o mo ya bi ne ba ya ma ne ma ru ma mo ika be ya bi ja ne na mu bo ayo tum bai ka ne ika pri waka ye me o mo ikram ti rai me ne ken ya ka jo me rai me ne ke ba ka ika pri rai ne taiga pelina pom taiga pelina mo ika penia ne ai mari ne ijo mari ja ko go baya meka ju ami mari mo ba mo ne yo yu tane ya bi
We're so grateful for the message. Just last night from Kasikahauni, it was nice to see Megaron and all the Kayapo warriors there behind, showing their respect for Kasikahauni, our elder, who we have so much respect for, and we continue this work in his honor and with his call. And there's been a lot of death, as he mentioned, that we're going to hear about in the COVID panel. A lot of sickness caused by COVID and other threats in the Amazon. And that's why we're starting off the panel now with talking about US policy for the Amazon. I think Marcelo and I are going to be co-hosting this section, this live panel.
Thank you, Leila. And it's interesting because not only I heard loud and clear that President Biden should speak to Kasikehauni, but I also heard a lot of great things from the previous speakers. And I'm very thankful that Jonah reminded us of the change we're seeing on the investment and business community, looking at the standing value of the forest. It's very important to hear from the faith that we have this important interconnection to nurture. And I think it's equally important to recognize that we have this interfaith, rainforest interfaith movement going on with 25 denominations. And in Brazil alone, Fé no Clima, we have among those denominations, the African descent denominations, all working together for a standing forest and for climate solutions. So this shows a big united front to make sure that we can accomplish what we have here today. I know that our friend Randy Hayes asked us, where is the specifics, the specific proposals? And I would like to remind people to go to the website where you can find it in the climateactionplatform.org, because there are much more issues in detail there. But for this panel here, we're very glad to have representatives also from the Brazilian Congress. And while we're talking a lot about Brazil here today, I think it's important to remind people that all things that were said here are Amazon-wide. When Noah spoke about the cocoa and the importance of the economics of the forest, we have incredible agroforestry projects, and we have incredible cocoa projects being developed all over Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. In fact, during this Christmas, I had the pleasure of eating chocolate from the Yanomami cocoa, where Demenges is producing it. So I'm very happy to recognize that we have a lot of change, we have a lot of solutions, and we have a lot of opportunities that are going on. But today in this panel, we're going to have Deputado talking to us, Deputado Faleiros, we're going to have Deputada Joênia, we're going to have Sonia, and this whole conversation is actually spread a lot about a letter that was issued by the work that both Deputado Faleiros and Deputada Joênia were spearheading this morning. And the letter ends with, "We want a plural, diverse, and inclusive country where all forms of life are valued and respected." So with that in mind, I would like to start by introducing Deputado Ayrton Faleiro to give us a brief recap of what happened in Brazil today and how he sees this moving forward.
Então, obrigado, Marcelo, obrigado, Leila. Obrigado pelo convite também. Quero cumprimentar os congressistas norte-americanos, congressistas brasileiros, e nada melhor do que fazer isso em nome da Joênia, nossa deputada indígena. Cumprimentar todas as organizações da sociedade civil, norte-americanas e brasileiras, que participam desse momento, e os nossos artistas, que dão voz, que dão imagem para essa causa tão nobre, que é a defesa da Amazônia e dos povos da Amazônia. Eu vou começar a falar de que nós tivemos um grande evento hoje pela manhã e agora continuamos com um grande evento até maior pela parte da tarde. Um evento que, além de ter uma participação expressiva, né, coordenada aí pelo Fórum em Defesa da Amazônia, que tanto a Sônia como a Joênia fazem parte, que não só pelo grau de participação, mas pelas resoluções tiradas nesse evento, tanto de uma carta como de um manifesto, que eu vou, de forma sintética aqui, dizer que vai muito de encontro com o que vocês já estão fazendo através das cartas que foram enviadas ao Biden, de diversos movimentos. Primeiro, nós não somos contra a cooperação internacional, mas nós queremos discutir como ela é construída, com quem ela é feita e a quem vai atender. Esta iniciativa do governo Biden, que nós respeitamos, mas nós não concordamos que não chame para discutir sobre a Amazônia os povos da Amazônia. Nós não concordamos que o Fórum de Governadores da Amazônia não seja chamado, que o Congresso Nacional não seja chamado. Então, nós discordamos do método. Mas nós vamos mais longe. Nós já dissemos, e vamos repetir, que o mundo democrático aplaudiu a vitória do Biden sobre o Trump, que é o Bolsonaro de vocês aí dos Estados Unidos. Penso igual, age igual. E ele derrotou esse pensamento politicamente. Não é possível que agora se faça um acordo a portas fechadas com o governo Bolsonaro, que é visto hoje pelo mundo como um genocida no tratamento da pandemia brasileira, que é visto hoje como quem ataca a legislação ambientalista no Congresso brasileiro, que ataca os povos indígenas, permitindo e querendo legalizar a mineração em terra indígena, que tem um ministro que vai lá na Amazônia tentar legalizar madeira roubada, extraída ilegalmente, que diz que tem que aproveitar das mortes da pandemia para deixar a boiada passar. Nós achamos que qualquer acordo de Biden com Bolsonaro ameaça e suja a imagem do Biden. Eu vou usar aqui duas palavras para encerrar. Primeiro, digas com quem tu andas, que eu direi quem tu és. O Bolsonaro não é um bom parceiro para esse acordo, em nome do protagonismo norte-americano. E eu quero fazer uma imagem aqui de que também muito conhecida mundialmente. Não se pode colocar a raposa para cuidar do viveiro. O Bolsonaro é inimigo da Amazônia, inimigo do meio ambiente, inimigo dos povos da Amazônia. Portanto, nós não concordamos. Temos muito o que propor. Temos muitas experiências vividas pela sociedade brasileira e por governos anteriores no Brasil, que tem que ir para uma mesa de negociação sobre cooperação internacional. Obrigado.
Muito obrigado, deputado. Thank you very much for those words. I think we underscored in the beginning those 4 points that you're making. Government-wide approach, everybody at the table, carbon nature adaptation and climate justice, and payment for performance. I would like to now, with no ado, invite Congresswoman Joênia Wapchana, leader of the Indigenous Caucus in the Brazilian Congress.
Manoan, Marcelo, thank you so much. Are you speaking Portuguese? Because the second land in Brazil. Quero agradecer a todos, né, por este momento que é tão oportuno e importante, não somente para a Amazônia, mas para o planeta todo. É uma responsabilidade nossa termos ações responsáveis, ações coletivas para o enfrentamento à crise climática que tem efeito em todo o planeta. Os povos indígenas têm feito seu papel há milhares de anos. Não apenas esperamos reconhecimento desse papel importante, mas precisamos ter participação nas soluções e, principalmente, proposições que venham da parte dos povos indígenas. Reconhecimento é importante, reconhecimento é muito essencial, mas, acima de tudo, respeito de quem tem feito boas práticas, que tem usado seus conhecimentos tradicionais para proteger e manter a floresta em pé, reconhecimento e deixar a participação e espaço de diálogos para nos ouvir, para nos consultar e, principalmente, ter ações que possam reafirmar todo o trabalho e continuar o trabalho que os povos indígenas já vêm desempenhando. As terras indígenas no Brasil, na Amazônia, representam 98% de sua totalidade e que estão localizadas na Amazônia brasileira. Isso nos deixa com uma responsabilidade enorme. E essa responsabilidade tem que ser compartilhada no sentido de também se haver compromissos, inclusive internacionais, de respeitar os direitos dos povos indígenas. Nós temos visto ações eficientes por lado dos povos indígenas, não somente com a sua boa prática, o seu compromisso que já vem de berço, a partir do nascimento da liderança, do nascimento dos jovens, mulheres que trazem na responsabilidade do manejo sustentável dos recursos naturais, seja ele da água, seja ele da biodiversidade. Queremos aqui, novamente, colocar como protagonistas. E, no segundo momento, eu gostaria aqui de me manifestar em relação a tudo que nós estamos passando hoje, o enfrentamento de uma política negacionista que vem por parte de um governo que foi eleito com propostas antiambientais, anti-direitos indígenas, anti-direitos humanos. É o governo Bolsonaro. Isso não é uma surpresa, isso não é uma questão simplesmente ideológica, são fatos concretos que vimos acontecer todos os dias. inclusive hoje, no noticiário nacional, se coloca como uma afronta a uma investigação que a Polícia Federal diagnosticou e estava investigando na Amazônia em relação ao desmatamento, e o próprio ministro do Meio Ambiente tentou jogar um balde de água fria para que essa investigação não se avançasse. Então, são dados que nós vimos, e é todo público, não é uma questão fechada, mas que nós estamos vendo uma responsabilidade de quem está no poder hoje, a autoridade, e que tem essa responsabilidade de fazer o enfrentamento. Então, eu queria aqui dizer que é muito importante a comunidade internacional, ela precisa trabalhar mais para incorporar os conhecimentos indígenas à solução climática e florestais, mas isso também visa a incluir, combater também a violência que os próprios guardiões da floresta têm enfrentado. A questão que aumentou drasticamente nesses últimos anos, nós vemos aqui que, por outro lado, se soma a um investimento de combater programas de conservação florestal, de proteção aos guardiões da floresta. E cabe aqui dizer que a ONU recentemente reconheceu os povos indígenas como os verdadeiros e os melhores guardiões da floresta. E esse reconhecimento é importante, mas é importante também para dizer que nós estamos aqui para o diálogo, colocar, digamos, as prioridades e melhores intenções. Talvez, né, as intenções, quando se colocou a responsabilidade em ter programas para a Amazônia, se foi na intenção de ter essa meta e também o cumprir os acordos internacionais, como o Acordo de Paris. Foi muito bem visto quando os Estados Unidos retornou o Acordo de Paris. Foi muito bem visto quando se preocupou de ter programas de apoio à Amazônia. Mas um acordo que venha a nascer, que não seja transparente, que não seja participativo, que não seja inclusivo aos povos indígenas, ele pode ser fadado, digamos assim, e isso eu coloco como alerta, ele pode trazer preocupações de quem é que está propondo ações de relação à Amazônia. Essa preocupação vai no sentido que nós estamos vendo um retrocesso nas políticas socioambientais indígenas. É preciso ampliar esse diálogo, é preciso ampliar essa participação.
Sim,
e os povos indígenas, nisso, os povos indígenas têm meio próprio de gerir os recursos e devem ser beneficiários direto desses acordos, que venham a fortalecer a proteção dos seus territórios e florestas, inclusive por acesso direto aos programas. Acho que tem alguém falando aí. E eu gostaria de chamar a atenção a um ponto também, que as empresas e os governos que venham a entrar em acordos com o Brasil precisam respeitar integralmente os direitos de consentimento prévio, livre e informado, que são amplamente, digamos, garantidos no âmbito internacional, como a Declaração da ONU aos povos indígenas, como na Convenção 69 da OIT, que fartamente são assegurados. Inclusive, no Brasil, isso é a lei. Eu acho que o principal acordo que hoje, nossa prioridade, e todo acho que é um consenso, é pela vida. Nós estamos num momento de pandemia, querendo nos salvar todo mundo, que haja vacina para todo mundo. Importante dizer que os guardiões ainda estão numa vulnerabilidade muito ampla. Quero reforçar que, até o momento, os povos indígenas na Amazônia enfrentam ainda o desafio de não terem concluído a demarcação de suas terras, não terem políticas claras e com recursos suficiente para fazer a proteção, fiscalização, monitoramento. Enfrenta no Congresso Nacional proposições que vêm por parte do governo, né, uma tentativa de flexibilizar as regras de proteção ambiental e também enfraquecer a proteção das terras indígenas, uma vez que se fomenta uma tentativa de regulamentar o garimpo. Eu gostaria somente de dizer que essa negociação que a gente está discutindo, a questão do Plano Biden, possa mudar por uma negociação transparente, onde os povos indígenas, os seus protagonistas, os povos da Amazônia, as autoridades da Amazônia, como o Fórum de Governadores, possam ser excluídos, ouvidos e colocadas suas preocupações e alertas. Nós temos sim, interesse de melhorar a proteção da Amazônia. Nós temos interesse, sim, de multiplicar os serviços que os povos indígenas vêm fazendo. Mas, acima de tudo, nós temos interesse de não retroceder a qualquer política de avanço que a gente já conquistou. É importante dizer bem claro que existe uma preocupação real, uma vez que o governo não tem demonstrado esse compromisso e seriedade de proteção. Fazer compromisso somente em metas futuras e não reconhecer que existe uma situação de vulnerabilidade na Amazônia é um péssimo passo a ser dado no acordo. Eu acredito que precisa ser mudado esse comportamento. A gente acredita que tem muito a se avançar. A responsabilidade tem que ser compartilhada e, acima de tudo, respeitar os povos que querem falar e se propõem a sentar numa mesa e apresentar suas ideias como solução. Agradeço a toda a organização que vem relacionada a isso. Nós estamos realmente precisando sentar na mesa e dialogar seriamente e, francamente, de igual para igual, como os povos indígenas sempre têm se colocado quando se trata bem, apenas para poder ver que se essas futuras gerações têm essa mesma oportunidade de conhecer a floresta em pé, de conhecer a Amazônia tal como a gente está hoje, fora qualquer política que venha querer degradar, e a gente precisa mudar esse cenário urgente para fazer com que haja realmente um plano de enfrentamento responsável às mudanças climáticas. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigada a você, Joênia. Thank you so much for your words, your powerful words, and your leadership. Some of the members of Congress might remember her actually at the U.S. Capitol last year. She was invited by then Congresswoman Deb Haaland at various meetings to hear directly from her and have a diplomatic dialogue between.
Yes. I was there last year there in the American Congress. I could visit different congresswomen. Thank you.
Obrigada. And I know that you have to go to a hearing now, so we're so grateful that you were here with us today. And it's now my honor to introduce Sonia Guajajara, who is the executive coordinator of APIB, the Articulation of Indigenous Peoples of Brazil, which is a representative body of all of the indigenous peoples of Brazil, in the Amazon, in the Pantanal, in the Cerrado, in the South, all across Brazil. And she is widely recognized for her leadership in defending the Amazon, climate, indigenous rights. Hola, Sonia.
Olá, boa tarde, Zaneca Aruca. Salve, salve, Leila, Marcelo, muito obrigada. Quero agradecer pelo convite e pela oportunidade de poder participar deste importante fórum. O segundo de hoje, mas no meio de tantos que a gente já participa durante tantos, dentro desses 520 anos da luta indígena. Eu gostaria de começar a minha fala dizendo que nós, povos indígenas no Brasil, saudamos essa colaboração internacional para proteger a Amazônia. Nós acreditamos na importância da solidariedade internacional, porque o Brasil passa por uma crise institucional profunda. Vivemos o aparelhamento das instituições de controle, segurança pública e defesa. Assistimos ao desmonte das legislações ambientais e sofremos com os ataques à democracia e aos direitos humanos. O governo do presidente Jair Bolsonaro tem avançado como um trator a sua agenda declaradamente racista, anti-indigenista e antiambiental. Os resultados de sua administração podem ser facilmente vistos nos mais de 360 mil mortos pela Covid-19, no aumento da violência e do número de indígenas assassinados, e de outras populações, de outros defensores e defensoras do meio ambiente que lutam em defesa da terra. Não é à toa que inúmeras organizações e juristas do Brasil e do mundo inteiro tem denunciado o presidente Bolsonaro contra crimes de genocídio e ecocídio. De agosto de 2019 a julho de 2020, 11 mil quilômetros quadrados da floresta foram destruídos no Brasil, uma área que tem 5 vezes o tamanho da cidade de São Paulo. Essa foi a maior devastação dos últimos 10 anos, e o mês passado, mês de março, foi apontado pelo próprio Instituto de Pesquisas Espaciais como o março recorde de desmatamento desde 2015. Sabemos que não há como avançar no combate às mudanças climáticas sem garantir a proteção da Amazônia. E por tudo isso, a defesa dessa floresta é uma questão urgente, uma crise humanitária que depende cada vez mais de uma ampla participação dos governos estaduais, das empresas e da sociedade civil internacional. Estudos e pesquisas científicas têm afirmado o que nós indígenas já sabemos e já alertamos há séculos, há milhares de anos. Os povos indígenas e comunidades tradicionais têm papel fundamental e estratégico para a preservação das florestas. Vivemos junto dela há milênios. O próprio Acordo de Paris, da Conferência do Clima, a própria Declaração de Nova York pelas defesas tropicais já reconhecem esse conhecimento tradicional como uma das últimas alternativas, aliada ao conhecimento científico, as últimas alternativas para conter as mudanças climáticas. E não é razoável esperar que as soluções para a Amazônia e nossos povos venham de negociações feitas ouvindo apenas o seu pior inimigo. Qualquer projeto para ajudar o Brasil deve ser construído a partir de diálogo com a sociedade civil, governos subnacionais, as universidades e, sobretudo, com as populações locais, que somos a floresta. E até hoje soubemos protegê-la com todos os bens que ela abriga. Porque para nós a terra é o corpo, é o território e é o espírito. Nesse sentido, é importante que o mundo saiba que está tramitando neste momento um projeto de lei elaborado por Jair Bolsonaro quando ele ainda era deputado, propondo a criação de uma milícia especial para a Amazônia, formada por policiais e militares. Nós não acreditamos em nenhuma solução para a proteção da floresta vinda de um poder militar paralelo, enfraquecendo ainda mais os órgãos ambientais que possuem técnicos com experiência e atuação comprovada na redução de invasões, destruição e desmatamento. Queremos alertar ao governo dos Estados Unidos que o ministro do Meio Ambiente, Ricardo Salles, espera receber dinheiro do cidadão americano para investir nessa milícia. Eles já tentaram uma estratégia semelhante enviando militares para a Amazônia, numa campanha que custou mais de 500 milhões de reais e, ao final, não deu nenhum resultado. Os Estados Unidos podem e devem, sim, assumir o seu papel na agenda climática e dar exemplo a outros países. Mas isso começa por ter uma posição firme com todos os governantes que não respeitam essa agenda. Também é preciso envolver os povos indígenas e a sociedade civil neste processo. E também por pressionar o governo Bolsonaro a apresentar avanços e resultados concretos para a garantia da defesa do meio ambiente, dos direitos humanos e da democracia. Nós não somos os únicos que necessitam viver nesse planeta. Nós apenas coabitamos a Mãe Terra, junto com milhões de outras espécies. O desprezo por essas outras formas de vida, as práticas de desmatamento intenso, feitas sempre em nome da economia de curto prazo, têm efeitos devastadores para o futuro de todos nós. Ao derrubar a floresta para substituí-la por agricultura intensiva e poluente, as espécies que vivem nesses lugares sofrem profundas transformações, causando, inclusive, grandes epidemias. Historicamente, o modelo de desenvolvimento pensado para a região amazônica tem sido às custas de vidas e surtos epidêmicos. O futuro dos filhos de todos os humanos e não humanos depende da nossa ação hoje. O futuro da vida neste planeta está em perigo. Peço ao governo Biden que não dialogue com quem não dialoga com as instâncias representativas do movimento indígena brasileiro. Respeitem a nossa autonomia e a nossa autodeterminação. Nós não queremos ser vistos como subalternos, submissos, primitivos ou coitadinhos. Nós queremos ser valorizados como a potência que somos, que garante as florestas em pé, a água limpa, o alimento saudável para muita gente. Respeitar esses modos de vida, o papel dos povos e territórios indígenas é um dever de toda a humanidade. E por isso fazemos esse chamado. Junte-se a nós nesta causa. Isso é uma emergência. Muito obrigada.
Obrigada, Sonia. So many recommendations directly from Brazilian members of Congress, from indigenous leadership, and now we're going to hear from U.S. policymakers. Thank you so much to Congress member Mark Pocan and Raul Grijalva for their messages, which we're going to see now and then go into the human rights panel.
Hi, I'm Mark Pocan, U.S. Congressman representing the people of Wisconsin's 2nd District. I have had the privilege of experiencing the Amazon itself, the beauty, the biodiversity, and some of the people. I'll never forget my first trip to the Amazon. Got a chance to go and experience the villages, see the biodiversity, and understand how important the Amazon is to the entire global climate. I'll never forget that trip. I've been back, and I will be back again. I understand the crucial role the Amazon plays for global climate, and I'm extremely concerned about the ongoing destruction, pushing the ecosystem towards an irreversible tipping point. To our friends meeting today in Brasilia, I stand in solidarity with your crucial efforts to protect the Amazon. I agree that Brazilian President Bolsonaro is a clear danger to the rainforest and should not be trusted with any international financial support until concrete measures to reduce deforestation and protect human rights are first demonstrated. In particular, I send my solidarity to the frontline guardians of the Amazon rainforests, like the Munduruku people who are directly confronting the machinery of destruction and who are courageously risking their lives to do so. To the U.S. policymakers who are joining the Amazon Climate Forum this afternoon, we need to step up our efforts to support the grassroots communities and social movements that are crucial to the Amazon's survival. One, we must center their voices in proposals and policy conversations about how to best protect the Amazon. And two, we must join other international allies to mobilize diplomatic pressure when local defenders are the targets of persecution or assassinations. I look forward to working with you all in a collective effort to protect one of the world's natural wonders. To all of you, thank you for participating today. We will protect the Amazon, the biodiversity, the people, and the vast need for this entire planet to survive. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Raul Grijalva. I'm a member of the United States Congress. I represent Arizona, Southern Arizona, and I'm also chairman of the Natural Resources Committee of the House of Representatives. And it's an honor to be here to thank the Amazon Climate Forum, all the participants, and all the organizations that are joining to confront the climate crisis and protect all life on Mother Earth. As the United States returns to the battle against human-caused and driven climate change, this re-engagement by our country is essential, and it must be substantive and it must be authentic. The last 5 years have been a cumulative loss for our planet. It's been a cumulative loss for communities across the world, and the Brazilian Amazon is a good region, is a good example, a vivid example of loss and suffering.
The pandemic, COVID-19 and this pandemic has disproportionately affected vulnerable communities, communities of color, indigenous, Afro-Brazilian communities in the region have suffered hundreds of thousands of deaths, have been ignored and neglected in terms of the vaccine response and the prevention strategies to protect public health. It's been done systematically and many of us suspect with intention. There's also been the political ramifications of and the cumulative loss there. The loss of the rule of law, the loss of the protection of international law in the Brazilian region and to the people, indigenous and Afro-Brazilian communities in that region. Oppression, suppression, political persecution, killings of leadership have all been part of a pattern of exploitation of people and of the region. And as the lungs of our earth, the Amazon, continues to be diminished, deforested, and abused, climate change gets worse and worse, and the crisis gets worse and worse in this country. The United States in its re-engagement, our substantive re-engagement, must be more than symbolic. It has to bring with it resources. It has to bring with it leadership. It has to bring with it the protection of vulnerable communities across this world and help save the life of Earth defenders. The U.S. must work with the United Nations to strengthen UN's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, to the protection of human rights, and monitoring the accountability of all nations and corporations, and to provide the resources to penalize, hold accountable, and provide sanctions to corporations who commit and tolerate environmental crime and human rights violations across this planet. And it's got to work to increase the monitoring of deforestation and illegal activities, identifying those parties, holding them responsible, and providing real punitive sanctions to those companies, those governments that continue this pattern of exploitation of people and of the environment. And by strengthening our financial regulations on companies and investors, we can hold them accountable. Why does the world and why does a powerful country like the United States have to continue to do business with those companies and those nations that exploit, abuse, and violate fundamental human rights and environmental protections for people, the region, and our planet? If we are to go forward and deal with this climate crisis, it must have a component of justice to it, that all communities are involved in it, that all stakeholders are there to begin to guide a return and a healing of this planet. This is a national priority for the United States. It has to be one. But with it comes an international responsibility that we leave no one behind. That as we repair this earth of ours, that no one left behind. That those communities with the vulnerabilities be protected and strengthened. So I think this re-engagement by the United States is essential. We can leave behind the legacy of Trump and his denial of climate change and the climate crisis, and bring into this discussion and into the actions that we have to take a collection of voices that have not been heard, of people that have not been represented, and of actions that must be taken to make sure all of us for generations to come are protected, our children, our great-children, and our great-grandchildren. So by you being here, you are telling the world, and you are telling this great country of ours, that it's time to be a leader, to be a protector, and to fully engage in fighting this climate crisis and to leave no one behind. environmental action on climate change, without environmental justice for people and for regions like the Brazilian Amazon region are something that we will not solve this problem without it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to partnering with you, to being your ally in the future. This is a fight worth having, and this is a fight we need to win. Thank you.
I just wanted to let you all know that we're going to be moving into the human rights panel. For those of you who joined us a little late or later, welcome to the Amazon Climate Forum, where you're hearing from indigenous leaders, regional leaders from the Amazon, policymakers from the North and South, activists, academics, scientists, youth leaders, and artists. And we're going to soon be hearing from Rosario Dawson, so hold tight. And we're also going to be moving into the human rights panel. And following the human rights panel, we're going to be having a panel on COVID-19 in the Amazon. You all have heard over this last hour about the threats to the Amazon and climate, the threats to the Amazon by development policies that promote extraction and development, such as agribusiness expansion, mining, oil exploration, dam building, deforestation, etc. And the number one protector, the number one defense against that destruction are indigenous guardians, are forest peoples. In fact, a recent report by the FAO showed that that the best protected forests on the planet are those that are in indigenous stewardship. Yet it's indigenous people and forest peoples who are defending and guarding and stewarding the forests that we all need to avoid climate chaos, to ensure future survival on this planet. It is those defenders, it is those guardians that are under attack. And unfortunately, these human rights defenders, in particular in Brazil and Colombia, these are some of the most dangerous places to be an earth defender. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this next panel. And we're going to be joined by Daniel Wilkinson from Human Rights Watch, from Bico Rodriguez from CONAC, Brazil, and Blanca Echeverri from IRI Colombia. So now, as I just introduced, we're starting the next panel, the human rights in the Amazon. And as I just mentioned, defending indigenous rights, defending human rights, defending the defenders is critical for protecting the Amazon. And we're talking about indigenous peoples, forest peoples, and also the allies. Allies such as people like Stephen Donziger, who is a human rights lawyer who has been under house arrest for nearly 2 years for defending the Amazon and winning a case against Chevron in the Amazon. We're going to move into the statement by Rosario Dawson. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rosario Dawson. On screen, I portray fictional heroes, but today I am here to pay tribute to real-life heroes, women and men who risk their lives every day to defend critical ecosystems. Last year alone, at least 330 human rights defenders were killed around the world, according to the organization Frontline Defenders. Of those, almost 7 out of 10 were protecting the environment, land, or indigenous rights. In the Amazon rainforest, the list of defenders who stood up to illegal loggers, land grabbers, and miners and were murdered for defending their rights grows tragically every year, with little to no accountability. Among those names is Arbildo Melendez Grandes, a community leader of the Cacataibo indigenous people of Peru. A little over 1 year ago, Arbildo was murdered following many death threats for demanding that the government issue a land title for his community. Since then, his widow Zulema Guevara has fought for justice for her husband and people. She too is receiving death threats. In Brazil, the president has publicly endorsed breaking environmental laws, and deforestation has seen a dramatic surge since his election. He has also cut funding for the protection of indigenous peoples in what the Catholic Church Missionary Indigenous Council has called a planned extermination. We cannot accept more activists on the list of martyrs for the environment. There are many courageous leaders like Zulema across the Amazon who deserve our support. I support the Amazon Climate Platform. We call for the Biden administration to increase diplomatic efforts to help protect climate activists and human rights defenders. For many defenders in the Amazon and around the world, tomorrow could be too late.
Wow. I just wanted to take a moment to really take in Rosario's words and bring forth, I know for us at Amazon Watch and our colleagues that work tirelessly every day in Peru, Arbildo and his family are in our prayers, are in our thoughts, are in our everyday work. And so I just want to take a moment to honor Arbildo, Paulinho, and so many others. We're going to move to the panel, and I'd like to invite Daniel Wilkinson from Human Rights Watch to be our first speaker.
Hi, Leila. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great.
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, first, thank you to you and your team for the invitation and all the great work that Amazon Watch does. Also to Marcelo and Connect Us and the other panelists. I would, I guess my main message is a message that this group doesn't really need. I think it's a message that's been conveyed throughout what you've heard, and especially very dramatically just now by Rosario. But it's something that still doesn't get the attention it deserves. And that's this. The crisis in the Amazon today is an environmental crisis, but it's also a human rights crisis. And it needs to be understood as such. And it's a human rights crisis on many levels. One level is actually affects the rights of the general population in terms of the destruction in the Amazon with the fires, that go with the deforestation that produce a huge amount of smoke and pollution. We did a report last year with the two leading Brazilian research organizations, IPAM and IEPAS, that showed that more than 4 million Brazilians were breathing air for weeks that was deemed unhealthy by WHO standards. So there's this generalized problem. But then there's a very specific problem, which is the focus of this panel and much of the discussion here, which is the rights of the people who are trying to defend the rainforest. And when I talk about the people trying to defend the rainforest, the forest defenders, we're talking especially about indigenous communities who play such a critical role. But also other non-indigenous communities, residents of the Amazon, and even members of environmental agencies working for the state who are trying to do the job of upholding the law under difficult and actually very dangerous circumstances. And it's dangerous because of the deforestation in these countries, and especially Brazil, which I'm going to focus on because that's what we've been working on, is being driven largely by criminal networks, by mafias that are powerful, that are dangerous, and that use violence and intimidation to target anyone who tries to stop them, who tries to uphold the law. And they're able to do this because their crimes are almost never properly investigated, and they're never held accountable. And this is an aspect of the problem that, you know, a lot of us in local communities, some of the other speakers you've seen before, have been trying to call attention to, but it still deserves more attention, that in addition to strengthening enforcement of environmental laws, which is key, there also needs to be, people need to be held accountable when they threaten, attack, and kill the people who are on the front lines of the effort to save the Amazon. Now, we did a big report a few years ago that looked at what happened with those cases. And it really was pretty appalling. I mean, impunity is a general problem in, you know, in many of these countries, but what we found was just, you know, the most egregious flaws in investigations, to the level of people would be killed, forest defenders, and there wouldn't even be an autopsy. And when it came to death threats, the authorities wouldn't even, they refused to even register them. And this is key, because in the vast majority of cases of forest defenders being killed that we documented, they had previously been threatened, right? These were deaths foretold. So if there had been some intervention early on, it would have provided some degree of protection. Now, this environmental crisis and the human rights crisis are inextricably linked. When the state fails to enforce the environmental laws and protect the rainforest, that puts the burden on local people, on indigenous communities, other communities, to do what the state should be doing. And that means they end up confronting these mafias. They end up putting themselves in danger, and they shouldn't. And then when there's not enforcement of just, you know, basic laws of, you know, criminal justice, investigating, prosecuting killings, it means that those people trying to protect the rainforest aren't able to do so. People are scared to do so. You know, so the basic message, which again we've been hearing throughout these conversations, but bears emphasis, bears repeating, and really needs to factor into the efforts to get solutions going forward, is to save the rainforest, you need to protect the people who are on the front lines protecting it. And this really needs to be a focus. Now, in the case of Brazil, these problems existed before Bolsonaro came into the presidency, the lack of enforcement, the impunity. But you know, what we all know is that the fundamental shift with Bolsonaro is that now you have a government that's openly hostile to forest defenders, is openly hostile to the state's own environmental agencies, is actively sabotage them, it's weakened the protections of indigenous communities, it's been contemptuous of civil society groups, harassing them, seeking to marginalize them. And so that's just something that absolutely has to change going forward. I was asked just to say a few words about what our recommendations are for the Biden administration, and I'll just quickly summarize so you get to the other panelists. I mean, basically, I think we all share the same views and the points that Amazon Watch and others have stressed, you know, we support as well. The things that we have in our communications with the Biden administration and with the Kerry team, what we've stressed is, first, the U.S. can and should play a very active role in supporting Brazilians' efforts to protect its rainforest and also other countries with rainforest. But again, I'm focusing on Brazil here. But they need to be smart about it. And there's a few things to keep in mind. And I'll just try to be quick here. First is, Brazil is much more than Bolsonaro. There are so many other actors who you've heard from, some of them, indigenous communities, environmental groups, society, people in Congress like Joênia, and governors at the state level, and in the private sector. There's so many allies there. And it's crucial that the Biden administration, the international community, involves them, not just because they have a lot to contribute, but because they're part of the solution. And one of the big obstacles is the Bolsonaro government's refusal to engage with them, and that's got to change. The second thing, as I said, is this needs to be seen as a human rights crisis with a priority on protecting the people who are protecting the rainforest. The third thing is this impunity issue, both for environmental crimes and other crimes. There needs to be an emphasis on making sure crimes are investigated and those responsible are held accountable. The fourth point has to do with economic development. You know, when confronted with their failures to enforce the environmental laws, the Bolsonaro administration, particularly the environment minister, has stressed the issue. They try to shift the discussion to economic development and about the importance of creating opportunities for people so that they don't engage in illegal deforestation. And I think everyone agrees that economic development, sustainable economic development is important, but you can't have that without the rule of law. There's no serious economic development without the laws being enforced. And what they need to do, there needs to be discussion of how to bring these things together. But what the Bolsonaro administration has to stop doing is use the problems of development as an excuse to not do anything on the issue of rule of law. The last thing is, agreeing with what others have said, is absolutely crucial that any assistance be conditioned on results. You know, the Bolsonaro government can make commitments. The President Bolsonaro sent a letter to President Biden just, I guess, today or yesterday with new commitments. They're not actually new, they're the old commitments, and saying now we're committed to what we weren't doing before, but they have a record of not meeting any of those commitments. Commitments are good, but what's needed are results. That's the only way that those commitments can be taken seriously. And the last thing I'll just mention is the United States should also be doing its part to address its role. And there is an initiative, a bill that's going to be introduced by Senator Schatz that would basically prohibit the importation of commodities that are linked to deforestation in Brazil and other parts of the world. And that's an important step that the US should also be consistent as it's trying to encourage the fight against deforestation in Brazil. It should make sure that the United States, that US companies and consumers are not contributing to it.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, thank you so much for your words. And many of the recommendations that you actually mentioned are recommendations that are in the Amazon Climate Platform, such as what you just mentioned about, well, upholding the collective rights of Indigenous people, defending environmental defenders, and supporting, ensuring that supply chains and financial portfolios are free from deforestation and fossil fuels. We cannot be investing either with US taxpayer money or have US companies be investing in the destruction of the Amazon. So again, go to the Amazon Climate Platform to see the recommendations. And then you'll also see the link to the Amazon Life Plan, which are direct recommendations to the US government and global governments from communities and regional allies all across the Amazon basin. So now we are going to hear from Bico Rodriguez. And Bico is is connected to the National Coordination.
Olá, boa tarde.
Olá, olá.
Boa tarde a todos e todas. É um prazer estar com vocês. Gostaria de agradecer a todos os parceiros nacionais e internacionais e a todos aqueles que estão nos assistindo, né? E que também lutam também pela preservação da Amazônia, né? Na defesa da Amazônia. Vivemos momentos difíceis, né? De momentos difíceis de uma crise ambiental, de uma crise econômica, de uma crise sanitária, né? E o que nos entristece muito, né, é saber que mesmo em meio, né, estas crises que a gente vive hoje, os nossos inimigos eles não dormem, né? E acordos são firmados às escuras, né? Acordos são firmados às escuras e acordos que mexem com a nossa vida, né? Momentos como esse, aonde que nós não estamos podendo chorar os nossos mortos, nem enterrar os nossos mortos.
And these agreements
Isso é muito triste.
are
E
being
esses
made
acordos
at
são
blind.
firmados às escuras.
Agreements
Inclusive,
that lead to
acordos
death.
que levam à morte, né?
As a Quilombola
Nós,
person,
quilombola,
community,
povos indígenas
indigenous
e povos de comunidades
communities, we are
tradicionais,
the
somos a
borders
fronteira que impede o
that
minério
prevent
hidronegócio, o
agribusiness
agronegócio,
to destroy
de
all of the
destruir
biodiversity in
toda
our
a
country. We are
biodiversidade que
the
existe no país.
borderline
Nós somos a fronteira que resistimos
that resist
e estamos resistindo há séculos
to the destruction of
a
this
destruição
biodiversity
de toda essa biodiversidade.
and we are biting it from
E estamos
happening,
impedindo, né,
and
que
we
ela
are
acabe. E temos pago um preço muito
paying a
caro.
very expensive price
Preço
with the
muito
lives of
caro
our
com as
leadership,
vidas das
the
nossas lideranças,
destruction of our
com a
territory,
destruição dos nossos territórios,
the
com
deployment
as
of
implantações dos megas
great
grandes
enterprises in our
empreendimentos sobre as
territory.
nossas terras.
This price
Esse preço é um preço
is also being
que vem
paid
também sendo pago também
by
pela
the destruction on the
destruição
safeguard
de todas as
policies that
políticas de
our people
salvaguarda, né, a qual os nossos povos tinham direito,
had as a right,
a política de demarcação dos territórios,
the marking of the
das
territory
comunidades
that we
quilombola,
had
dos
the right
povos
to have
indígenas,
on the Quilombola
e com
communities
isso
and
aumentando
indigenous
o conflito
communities.
nos nossos territórios. Perdemos muita vida, principalmente nos últimos períodos,
Mainly
né?
by the
Principalmente
advance on the
também
great
pelo avanço
capitals
também
over our
dos grandes
territory.
capitais sobre os nossos territórios.
We are
Nós somos
at
a
the
fronteira
border
que impede
that prevent
esses
these
megas empreendimentos de destruir não
enterprises
somente a
to
Amazônia,
destroy the Amazon
mas
and
todos
all
os
the
biomas,
biomes.
né? Porque as comunidades quilombolas estão em todos os biomas, os povos indígenas
Traditional
também estão em todos os
communities
biomas, e povos
and
de
indigenous
comunidades
communities.
tradicionais,
But the
mas a
Amazon is our
Amazônia,
mother here in
ela
Brazil.
é
It is
a
our
nossa mãe
root.
aqui no Brasil. E a gente precisa ter um olhar muito
And we must have a peculiar
muito
trait
peculiar para a Amazônia e
for
entender
us to
a
understand
dimensão dos povos
the people that
que ali
live and that are
existem
protecting
e
the
que ali
biodiversity in the
estão
Amazon.
ali protegendo essa biodiversidade a séculos.
We know that our
Sabemos que
importance,
a nossa importância,
the numbers,
os
they are in there.
índices estão aí, né?
The death
O índice de
numbers
mortalidade do nosso
of
povo
our people
nos
in the
últimos 5
past
anos
5 years
cresceu,
have
aumentou,
increased
né, de
for the
assassinato das nossas
Quilombola
lideranças
leadership
quilombola, aumentou 365%.
more than 300%. The Amazon
A
nowadays,
Amazônia hoje, ela é
68% of the
68% da
population
população que vive na
that
Amazônia.
lives in the Amazon is
A Amazônia é
black,
negra, né? 68% da
and that
população que vive na
has an
Amazônia
important
é a
role
população negra,
on the
e que tem
preservation
papel
of that
importantíssimo
biodiversity.
também na preservação dessa biodiversidade,
Sometimes
que às vezes se
it
torna
is
invisível,
invisible
né?
when we
Invisível
talk about the Amazon.
quando se comenta sobre a Amazônia.
The world
Precisamos que o
must
mundo possa
understand, we need the
entender
world to understand the
a
importance that
importância,
us,
né, que nós, povos
Quilombola
indígenas, comunidades
community,
quilombolas,
indigenous
povos e
community,
comunidades
and
tradicionais
traditional
temos
communities,
na preservação do
grassroots
bioma.
communities have
Precisamos que o mundo possa
to
entender e nos
make
ajudar
sure
a
to
garantir, a
effectively
efetivar
make
o
sure
direito à
the
terra,
rights
o direito
to
à saúde, o
development,
direito ao
to
desenvolvimento
life
sustentado,
in this
o direito à
rainforest.
vida a qual esses
The
povos
world
têm
must
direito.
understand that the
Precisamos que o mundo
rivers,
entenda que
they
os rios,
do not
eles não
raise
nascem nos
in the
grandes centros,
centers, in the main
os rios
cities.
nascem nos nossos territórios. E
They
nascem
raise
nos
in our
territórios
territories
porque
because
nosso
our way of
jeito de
producing,
produzir, nosso jeito de
our
cuidar
way
da
of
terra,
preserving and
a nossa
looking after the
forma
land
de
of the
preservar foi o que
biodiversity
garantiu que
make
essa
the rivers
biodiversidade e que os rios
to have
continuem
their streams
correndo
over the
vivo
countries.
pelo país.
Any agreement that is taken over
acordo
the
que
Amazon
seja firmado
is important
sobre a Amazônia é importante
to
passar
be
pelo
heard
crivo
by the
dos
rainforest people,
povos das florestas. É
the
preciso
same people
passar
that is
pelo
in
crivo
the
dos
Amazon.
povos que estão
We
na
do not
Amazônia.
accept to be
Nós não
coadjuvant in
aceitamos
this process
ser coadjuvante nesse processo. Nós somos
of
protagonistas nesse
agreement
processo de acordo,
in which
aonde que na
we are
proteção nós somos
protagonists
protagonistas.
in the
Nós somos
protection.
protagonistas. Nós somos protagonistas em preservar
We
a
are the main characters
biodiversidade.
in
Nós somos
preserve
protagonistas em preservar a vida.
biodiversity and
Preservar a
life.
Amazônia
To
significa
preserve the
preservar a
rainforest
vida.
is to preserve
Precisamos
life.
sim. Precisamos sim que as parcerias são muito
Partnerships
importantes
are
para
very
que a gente dê
important
conta
for us
dessa
to
imensidão
take
que
over
é a nossa Amazônia
this
e nos
wide
ajude.
territory there is the Amazon.
Mas que esta
but its
preservação da
preservation
Amazônia, ela não fira, né, princípios básicos como a autonomia
does not
e a
face
soberania do nosso país.
sovereignty and autonomy of
Precisamos
our
sim
country.
que os
Our
nossos
principles
princípios
and our
e os
rights
nossos
must
direitos
first
sejam
be
respeitados.
respected,
E
and
precisamos
we
sim
must count
contar
on
com todos e
everyone,
todas, porque a
because the
Amazônia
Amazon
é o pulmão do mundo e
are the
precisamos
lungs of the
respirar
world,
esse
and we
pulmão
must
do
breathe
mundo.
from it.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you.
Muito obrigado. Thank you for your messages, Pico, and showing once again the great diversity that is in the Amazon rainforest, both cultural and natural biodiversity. And we need to hear from all of the voices. So thank you. And now we're going to hear from Blanca Echeverri, the National Coordinator of the Interfaith Forest Initiative from Colombia.
Hola, muy buenos días. Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad. Quiero empezar contándoles que la Iniciativa Interreligiosa para los Bosques Tropicales nació en el Centro Nobel de Paz en junio del 2017 como una alianza internacional que proporciona a las religiones y líderes una plataforma para trabajar en la protección de los bosques con el respaldo de su influencia moral y espiritual. La iniciativa ha desplegado sus primeras acciones en Colombia, Brasil, Perú, República Democrática del Congo e Indonesia. Estos países albergan el 70% de las selvas tropicales que aún quedan en el mundo y enfrentan las mayores amenazas contra ellas. La iniciativa busca crear conciencia sobre la gravedad de la deforestación e inspirar la acción para restaurar y proteger los bosques y los derechos especiales de los pueblos indígenas. También busca influir sobre gobiernos para frenar la deforestación y con empresas para que adopten medidas de protección de las selvas tropicales. IRI Colombia hace presencia en municipios de la Amazonía que registran las mayores tasas de deforestación. Allí hemos instalado 36 capítulos locales en los que participan líderes religiosos, sociales, ambientales y políticos, organizaciones sociales y gobiernos locales. La fuerza moral de IRI Colombia y el conocimiento de las regiones donde hace presencia la legitiman para señalar que las nuevas estrategias de protección de la selva amazónica deben responder a las amenazas que la fumigación de cultivo de uso ilícito representa para los derechos humanos y las causas de la violencia contra los defensores del ambiente. La iniciativa recuerda a la comunidad internacional que la lucha contra el narcotráfico resulta más eficiente y respetuosa de los derechos humanos bajo las siguientes condiciones: investigación integral del impacto y la eficacia de políticas y proyectos de desarrollo sostenible, fortalecimiento del Estado social de derecho en la Amazonía. Esto significa superar una intervención estatal caracterizada por la presencia de la fuerza pública y dar paso a una intervención basada en el respeto y garantía de los derechos humanos. Protección y fortalecimiento de los medios de producción indígenas en un contexto de respeto por los derechos de estos pueblos. Apoyo a la implementación efectiva de los acuerdos de paz, en especial de sus componentes de sustitución y erradicación de cultivos de uso ilícito, consumo y narcotráfico. Protección eficaz de los defensores del ambiente. El Estado colombiano ha intentado controlar los cultivos de coca mediante 3 tipos de políticas: erradicación con aspersión de glifosato, erradicación manual y sustitución voluntaria de cultivos. Un reciente informe del Centro de Estudios sobre Seguridad y Drogas de la Universidad de los Andes señala que, según las cifras disponibles sobre áreas de cultivos de coca, esas políticas han fracasado y han generado efectos negativos sobre la población y el ambiente. El informe también reseña que resultan más eficaces las medidas que atacan los eslabones fuertes de la producción y comercialización de sustancias ilícitas. El gobierno quiere reanudar la aspersión de glifosato. Por ello, IRI Colombia apoya el mensaje y que organizaciones internacionales y nacionales hicieron llegar al gobierno de Estados Unidos solicitándole abstenerse de financiar la aspersión de glifosato en Colombia. Respaldarla, como se lee allí, envía un mensaje de crueldad e insensibilidad con que los Estados Unidos no debería seguir asociado. IRI Colombia no puede guardar silencio sobre la situación de riesgo que afrontan los defensores del ambiente. El país ocupa un doloroso primer lugar en las estadísticas de homicidios de defensores del ambiente. Frontline Defense ha denunciado que en 2020 fueron asesinados en Colombia 277 defensores del ambiente. El segundo lugar de este ominoso ranking lo ocupa Filipinas con 25 asesinatos. Las restricciones de tiempo me impiden profundizar las complejas causas de este penoso asunto. Sin embargo, señalo que los esfuerzos del gobierno por prevenir y reprimir la violencia contra los defensores del ambiente resultan débiles. A decir verdad, las autoridades no parecen tener un compromiso serio con la protección de estas personas. IRI Colombia rinde homenaje a la memoria de las valientes mujeres y hombres que han abonado con su vida la defensa de la naturaleza y de la biodiversidad. Concluyo señalando que la aprobación del Acuerdo de Escazú resulta indispensable para fortalecer la protección del derecho al ambiente sano y a la vida de sus defensores. Por ello, Colombia necesita ese acuerdo que enfrenta poderosos adversarios. Su adopción por el Estado colombiano está naufragando. IRI Colombia reitera su ferviente llamado a la comunidad internacional para que exija al Estado colombiano asumir con seriedad el compromiso de impulsar la adopción del acuerdo y aprobarlo sin más dilaciones. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a ti, Blanca. Thank you so much, Blanca, for these words and reminders of the human rights situation in Colombia, and for all of your work with the Interfaith Forest Initiative. We have an amazing final panel on COVID-19 in the Amazon, and this is an urgent humanitarian crisis that is affecting the defenders of the Amazon. So we really hope that you can stay with us. We're going to hear from Maria Gadu and then move into the panel.
Olá, I'm Maria Gadu, artist, activist, and very Brazilian. The Golden Rush has always been a guide in the road race. Gold, as a reason for significant displacements, has hidden and showed in numerous intentions over the centuries. Amazon Gold Rush promoted wars, countless deaths, historical erasure, especially to indigenous people, violating history, forests, cultures, dignity, and respect. We arrive in 2021. The cracks created in the soil of Mother Earth also put biomes indigenous people at risk. They poison waters with toxic mercury. They kill people, animals, and plants. The Munduruku, do Alto Tapajós, and the Yanomami continue to resist in a country where the growth of gold mining is allowed in any situation. The government that allows mining does not drink mercury water. A government that announced the dismantling of Brazil before it was implemented. For the Minister of the Environment, Ricardo Salles, the cattle will pass, taking blood, pain, destruction, and no advancement. As the cattle runs through the Amazon, they bring machinery and sadness, making it possible for COVID to run through these lands, putting indigenous people at great risk. Illegal miners cross land barriers, bringing genocide to these territories. I am on the side of those who fight against illegal mining, on the side of the Yanomami and Munduruku. A Amazônia é terra indígena. O Brasil é terra indígena.
Thank you so much, Maria Gadu, for this message and this strong reminder for all of us. I think it's important to just recognize, Leila, from the previous panel connection to the COVID one, that at the end of the day, we're hearing a very consistent message here. Daniel was very clear on reminding us that we have such an opportunity where civil society is promoting solutions. There is business aligned with solutions. There is academia indicating solutions. Indigenous peoples working for solutions and politicians working for solutions. We must, as Congresswoman Joenia put, we must not move backwards. Let's take advantage of this incredible opportunity and all the work of those that have done this construction behind us and before us to make this happen. And let's honor those that did all this and helped us arrive at this point to keep moving forward. And I particularly think that important phrase that Biko and Blanca brought, explaining that this is not only about the environment, we need justice, we need technology, we need health, we need all these elements included, but also about we need everybody at the table. This is extremely important. And to have everybody at the table, we need everybody alive. And I think if we look into the COVID numbers, if you look at the global shameful statistics of 130 million people contaminated, and of those 3 million deaths, you see that 2% of everybody that has been contaminated died on the global statistics. When you look at the Hapan Koika mapping of what's going on in the Amazon, and let me underscore here how important it is for the work that Hapan and Koika is doing by mapping this, because in order to change, I've learned with my friends at WRI that you need to count it first in order to change it and then scale solutions. And unless we have good evidence and tracking and evidence, we can't do that. So it's a wonderful, hard work that Hapan and Koika are doing on bringing these numbers. And when you look at those numbers, you see that while the global statistics is that 2% of the contaminated people are dying, in the Amazon, in the Pan-Amazonia, the number is 7%. So the death is 3 times higher in Pan-Amazonia than in the globe. And also, although Brazil is with horrible numbers of deaths, it's also more than the Brazilian statistics, which shows the importance of us understanding that it's about vaccine, but it's about access to health, access to services. And I'm very happy that we have this incredible panel with a representative, a mayor of an Amazon city, because a lot of people forget that we have important populous cities in the Amazon, all over the Amazon 9 countries, and also a representative from the civil society in order to share with us the struggle of the indigenous communities and the cities living this hardship in the Amazon. So with you, Leila.
Thank you for that introduction. And, we've all, I think if one thing I reflect on thinking about a year of the pandemic is that viruses have no borders, just like climate has no borders, the climate chaos. There's no borders when it comes to these crises, these multiple crises that are facing Mother Earth, that are facing humanity. And over this last year, I've had the honor to work closely with Gregorio Mirabal, who is the general coordinator of Koika, the coordinating body of the indigenous peoples all across the Amazon. They've been working tirelessly in response to the COVID crisis all across the Amazon in the 9 countries, and uniting both indigenous peoples, forest peoples, and their allies in responding to this humanitarian crisis, this emergency, because that's what it is. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's an emergency. And so I want to introduce Gregorio Mirabal, José Gregorio Mirabal. Buenas tardes.
Un saludo a todo el planeta, desde la cuenca amazónica, desde la Amazonía, nuestra casa, nuestro hogar. Queremos, con el permiso de los espíritus de la selva, estamos aquí como pueblos amazónicos para enviar un mensaje directo de esperanza y de compromiso al nuevo presidente de Estados Unidos, Joe Biden, y a su Congreso demócrata y republicano que lo representa en el Congreso de Estados Unidos. Estimado presidente Joe Biden y su equipo de gobierno y a sus congresistas, hoy queremos recordarle con mucho respeto y con mucho cariño que hace casi un siglo y medio un hermano indígena de Estados Unidos le envió un gran mensaje a un presidente de Estados Unidos. Hoy, con mucho respeto, nosotros, los amazónicos, desde nuestra casa, desde nuestra maloca, en la Amazonía, en la cuenca amazónica, queremos también darle un gran mensaje, pero desde América del Sur, desde la cuenca amazónica. Hoy queremos felicitarlo por su victoria electoral, pero también queremos felicitarlo por devolver la esperanza al mundo y devolver la vida al Acuerdo de París. Estimado presidente Joe Biden, hoy le queremos pedir que dejemos las diferencias y armonicemos la palabra. Busquemos la unidad en las acciones. Estimado presidente Biden, queremos hoy proponerle un plan de vida para la Amazonía. Queremos proponerle un plan para enfriar juntos el planeta que se está quemando, se está calentando. Queremos hoy un plan para defender nuestras vidas que están en peligro. Queremos hoy defender nuestra madre selva amazónica. ¿Qué le proponemos? En primer lugar, su ayuda con un plan de vacunación ante la emergencia sanitaria que ya lleva más de un año y unos meses. Ayúdenos con un plan de vacunación para nuestros pueblos indígenas. En segundo lugar, ante la emergencia ambiental, apóyenos para frenar la deforestación y el extractivismo y la minería ilegal que está asesinando a nuestros hermanos y a nuestros territorios. Y en la emergencia económica, en la emergencia política y social, necesitamos que nos ayude con una economía que respete la selva amazónica, una economía que permita que la Amazonía siga viva. Y es por eso, estimado presidente, tenemos un fondo de emergencia por la Amazonía, ayúdenos. Tenemos un plan sanitario desde la visión de los pueblos indígenas. Los 511 pueblos indígenas de la cuenca amazónica y 400.000 millones de árboles. Estamos esperando su apoyo y que no nos maten y que no nos asesinen. Estimado presidente, apoye la esperanza, apoye nuestra sabiduría para conservar el planeta. Nuestra sabiduría va a salvar el planeta, pero necesitamos su ayuda. necesitamos su poder, necesitamos su tecnología. Esas imágenes satelitales de la NASA demuestran cómo está la Amazonía. Esa tecnología es de ustedes y nos puede ayudar a nosotros. Estimado presidente, convoque, llame, despierte a los gobiernos de América del Sur para que se sienten con los pueblos indígenas y hagamos un plan de acción conjunto. Y le voy a robar unos segundos para mostrar una sola imagen. Estamos en emergencia. Estamos exigiendo nuestro derecho a la vida. Estamos exigiendo nuestro derecho a existir como pueblos. El gobierno de Estados Unidos, con su nuevo presidente, Joe Biden, su Congreso, apóyenos. Por favor, convoque una reunión con los pueblos indígenas, con su equipo de gobierno, con su equipo de trabajo. Solo eso esperamos, estimado presidente, y muchas gracias.
Gracias, Gregorio. Very nice to see you again. And I was very honored to be at the climate event, the Climate Week, when we launched together the Indigenous Peoples Fund, which was a great honor. Also to show that it's not only the finance and the investment world that knows how to put investment funds together. Here's the Indigenous peoples doing their own fund and showing to the world leadership and wisdom, as you well said. I would like now to invite Prefeito Edmilson Rodrigues, Mayor Rodrigues, to share with us a few words. How can we have solidarity among all of us in order to, one, people understand that the forest is also about people and health. Please, Prefeito.
Primeiro, muito obrigado pela oportunidade de falar como
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity
uma metrópole
to talk to you as the mayor of Belém, a metropolis that is in the middle of the forest of the most important biome of the Brazilian territory and in the planet itself. I'm talking about the Amazon forest. I'd like to send an Amazon hug to Leila Salazar Lopes and everyone who are participating in enabling us to have this conversation. I want to state my pleasure and my honor for being able to talk to representatives of NGOs with affection and respect to institutions of the North American government that are watching this conversation, because here we want to extend the principle of international solidarity. The North American people has given us a great contribution, we Brazilians, by defeating Trump and electing Joe Biden. We hope at this moment that the North American state can give a contribution following the desire of our North American brothers and sisters, stating their solidarity, their love, and their commitment with the social justice, ecological balance, and democracy. In summary, a commitment to life and respect to differences. We stand for the Brazilian sovereignty, and that's not a contradiction when it comes to the participation of the international society in the defense of the forest. The Amazon forest has a huge importance now because it's huge biodiversity, but we also have social diversity that is unmatched anywhere in the world. Even though we have been for more than 500 years with violent policies, we still have 304 indigenous peoples. We have 274 languages that are alive, but sadly, very sadly, year after year, we see peoples being decimated. Peoples that lose their cultural identity, their linguistic identity. And now we pay tribute to Leonardo da Vinci, who in April 1452 was born. And last year, UNESCO decided in its assembly to create the Day of Art. But at this moment in which the pandemic is killing more than it should, because there is a government policy that is genocidal, that encourages death. We are going through a genocide against indigenous peoples, and that is encouraged by the Brazilian state. The world becomes poorer in cultural, ethnical terms, and that violence cannot continue. Today, we need the solidarity from all peoples in the world. And the United States can really help us when they don't create commercial links or provide financial support to a government that is absolutely destroying intentionally the state institutions that work with the protection of indigenous lands. The government is destroying lives, is encouraging murders of indigenous peoples, literally, and is encouraging the murders when we have a president that encourages wood extractors, mining companies to occupy these lands with their machines and destroy the ecological balance and kill our indigenous peoples, or poison them even. Here, Maria Gadu, just as Sonia Guajajara, they mentioned Yanomami. 56% of our Yanomami brothers and sisters are suffering with mercury poisoning. That is a state policy that should not be left unnoticed. We need to have the North American government develop policies that help us to resist this genocidal policy. That is something that has been happening for centuries, but now it has become inhuman. We are going through a humanitarian crisis, a very large crisis, and that's why we are claiming for solidarity from abroad. The Brazilian Federation is inspired in the American Federation, but here we have something else. We have three federative spheres, and the cities, they are considered their own entities. They are autonomous, and they can develop relations for the cooperation at an international level. And these cooperation actions are welcome here because we are hostages of a criminal. The president has links to militias that kill indigenous populations, and in the large cities such as Rio de Janeiro and Belém, these metropolis with more than 2.5 million inhabitants in the middle of the forest, here it has become banal, it has become commonplace killing black people in the outskirts of the city, because these militias, they have the support, the institutional support from the president of Brazil. It's very serious. I just have to say that while our environmental agency that is supposed to inspect and control deforestation and forest fires, with 700 inspectors, spends 70 million reais every year. The vice president of Brazil is in charge of an operation. He is in charge of more than 30,000 soldiers with aircraft and helicopters. Even though the vice president has taken up this task, weakening many other institutions, deforestation has increased in 2020 34%. These are more than 9,000 square 9,200 square kilometers, much larger than our city. More than 2 million people live here, just for you to have an idea. This territory that has been destroyed is the same as 19 times the size of Porto Alegre, a very large city in the south of Brazil. It corresponds to 45 times the size of the city of Recife. Can you imagine that? This territory being burned down to the ground by these criminals that show up as good people because they are approved and they are in favor with the president and the vice president, who is a former general of the Brazilian army that changed these institutions. So with this in mind, the Amazon is going through this, but we still can manage somehow to preserve the biodiversity of the planet. We have a huge part of water reserves in the world, so we can do a lot for peoples all around the world, and we want to collaborate. But the urbanization in the Amazon region is full of blood. There are cities that have terrible conditions because there is lack of employment, there is violence, there is racism, there is poverty, there is encouragement for the prejudice against indigenous people. I've been in the government of the city of Belém for 4 months, and as the representative of an autonomous entity, which is our city, I'm at your disposal to have conversations and to collaborate for the resistance against everything that I have mentioned. And I want to thank you for all the efforts that you have done.
Muito obrigado, Prefeito. Thank you very much
for this opportunity.
It's good also to remind President Biden that the city he now lives in, Washington, D.C., compared to your city is 5 times bigger than the city he is currently living. And looking at the incredible cultural and nature value of your city, I think he should also be very encouraged to join forces and listen to this very strong message. Thank you so much. I would like to then conclude this panel and thanking you and thanking Gregorio very much for your interventions. I think COVID-19 was an incredible reminder for all of us of how much and how important it is for us to take care of our lives, of our health, of the health and lives of our families, and the health and life of our planet. And in that sense, I think the Amazon rainforest is an incredible place for us to practice that. And I thank you both very much for joining us today. Leila, please.
Thank you all. That was on fire. That was hopefully everyone heard that message loud and clear. I don't think there was any static there. And it did remind me of the fires, which have been mentioned throughout the event. But part of the reason why we're here today too is because of the urgency and because of all of the threats to the Amazon. And those threats, for those of us who've been living and working for 25 years or more, or for thousands of years, as the indigenous and forest peoples have. We know that there's always been threats. There's always been threats to the Amazon, whether it be oil extraction, agribusiness expansion, mining, deforestation, legal and illegal, colonization, initial genocide, even vaccination, programs. So we know there's been many threats to the Amazon and her peoples for hundreds of years. Yet the last few years have really taken it to another level. We all watched in Nepal, the fires burning across the Amazon in 2019. And again last year, amidst COVID, we saw it again. And it was even worse. And deforestation was even worse. So that's why we're here today. We know President Biden, Vice President Harris, members of Congress, we know you saw that too. And that's why we're here today, to come together, to find a common solution and work together. Because as I mentioned before, climate and COVID have no borders. We know that we are so connected to the Amazon rainforest. Every tree that falls and all the deforestation that occurs affects our global weather system. The rainfall in the Amazon is only created if there are trees and there are forests. And that rain that is created in the Amazon and develops those flying rivers that irrigate the breadbaskets of South America and the United States, they are essential for our climate stability. They are essential. We will not have rain or snow in the Sierras or the Rockies if we don't have an intact Amazon. We are all connected. And I know that is a key message that we hope that you heard today. We are connected between the North and South. Indigenous peoples that we work with say it's a prophecy. It's a prophecy of the eagle and the condor coming back together. There was separation. There was colonization that caused so much destruction over these last nearly 600 years. And it's resulted in these last few years that we've been living in. And the prophecy says that when it gets to that point, there's going to be a point where we have to come together and transform and make change. And I believe that we're in that moment right now. And so we're not looking at this as separate borders. We're looking at this as coming together to protect our future, all of our common future. And so that is our appeal. That is our appeal today to you, President Biden, Vice President Harris, the entire US government, to lead, to show leadership and listen to the people who elected you and the people that you heard from today, the people who are on the front lines of these crises in the Amazon, the people who have the solutions to protecting the rainforest, to defending the defenders, and promoting climate justice at this critical, critical time. And that also means equity in healthcare and vaccinations. Because if there isn't that, then Indigenous peoples and people from the Global South will not have equal access to all of the important conversations we need to be having about biodiversity and climate this year at the global conferences that are coming up. So we thank you for being here today. We're not done yet. We have gone a little bit over time, but we still have some very powerful messages. And so if you have to step off, please, please, please go to our AmazonClimatePlatform.org to see all the different points of the Amazon Climate Platform, to see the specific recommendations, to see the Amazon Life Plan that Gregorio talked about that have very specific recommendations on health equity, on defending defenders, on protecting the Amazon, on debt for nature. So please go there, and please continue to stay with us to hear the final closing statements from Cardinal Barreto, from Romina Rivera from the Pan-Amazon Social Forum, from IPCC Nobel Prize winner Carlos Nobre, from Chie Bastida, a youth climate activist here in the United States, from Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, and finally, from Barbara Streisand. So please don't go away, stay with us, and we will start the closing videos.
Muy buenos días, amigos y amigas que están participando en esta importante asamblea de pueblos indígenas cuya voz tiene que resonar en el mundo entero, porque la Amazonía es muy importante para la humanidad, para la vida del planeta, pero también en este bioma amazónico de más de 8 millones de kilómetros cuadrados habitan cerca de 400 poblaciones indígenas con sus culturas propias, con su espiritualidad y con esta responsabilidad también de vivir en un bioma que es de ellos, pero al mismo tiempo que afecta positivamente a la vida de la humanidad entera. Regula el clima de la tierra y produce también como fuente hídrica la lluvia de todos los lugares del mundo. De alguna manera podemos decir que estabiliza el clima. La Amazonía es la fuente de vida, de esperanza, de alegría para la humanidad. Maltratar la Amazonía no solamente es maltratar a los pueblos originarios que viven en ella, sino destruir sus culturas y su hábitat armonioso de una relación, yo diría, importante con la naturaleza, y como el Papa Francisco también lo indicó, ellos son los guardianes de la Amazonía. Esta Amazonía como bioma y como uno de los pulmones del mundo está siendo amenazada no solamente por la pandemia del COVID-19, sino también por otras pandemias sociales que desde siglos atrás está afectando la calidad de vida de nuestros hermanos y hermanas de los pueblos originarios y de aquellos que, aunque no han nacido en la región amazónica, están viviendo también y compartiendo la vida y la riqueza de este bioma. Hay que valorar mucho el modo de vida, el estilo de vida sobrio en el que viven los hermanos indígenas, no como una miseria, podríamos decir así, sino como un modelo importante para la vida social hoy. Ellos no acumulan porque saben que nuestra madre tierra le provee el agua, los alimentos necesarios para la vida, y por tanto ellos viven, yo diría, al día, viven esa pobreza, pero una pobreza con una gran riqueza de espiritualidad, de una gran riqueza también de sus culturas. Valorar el estilo de vida y la relación de los pueblos con la naturaleza hace que todos nosotros tengamos una importante y comprometedora actitud. Es importante también escuchar a los pueblos amazónicos, dialogar con ellos, relacionarnos como personas, respetando también el convenio 169 de la Organización Interamericana del Trabajo. Y por tanto, esta Organización Internacional del Trabajo, que establece la obligación de los estados de realizar medidas necesarias para determinar las tierras que los pueblos ocupan tradicionalmente y garantizar la protección efectiva de estos derechos, instituyendo para ello procedimientos adecuados para la resolución de los conflictos. El trabajo y el servicio de la red eclesial panamazónica, la REPAM, y de la Iglesia en su conjunto con los pueblos originarios amazónicos es un proceso que desde hace varios siglos la Iglesia está comprometida con la Amazonía, pero al mismo tiempo en los últimos años y especialmente con el sínodo amazónico que se realizó en Roma con presencia de representantes también de las comunidades originarias amazónicas, ha hecho que el Papa Francisco asumiera una expresión que no solamente es una retórica o una palabra, es querida Amazonía. Y por tanto tenemos que ser conscientes que la Iglesia Católica es una aliada muy importante de los gritos y clamores de los pobres y también de nuestra Amazonía. Tenemos pues también que pensar en los impactos del cambio climático y del COVID-19 en las poblaciones amazónicas y que urge pues una promoción de la vacuna para estos pueblos olvidados de nuestra Amazonía. Mucho ánimo a las poblaciones indígenas, a los gobiernos de nuestros pueblos y que definitivamente tenemos que ser conscientes que todos nosotros somos Amazonía, una Amazonía para el mundo y una Amazonía cuyos pueblos originarios nos enseñan a vivir este plan de vida sobrio, austero, solidario. Muchas gracias.
Desde el Foro Social Panamazónico, esta articulación de organizaciones e instituciones de los 9 países de la Amazonía, queremos expresar nuestro respaldo a la carta enviada por la sociedad civil brasileña, quienes le han pedido al presidente Biden que esta cumbre, convocada para el 21 y 22 de abril en Estados Unidos, no se haga a puertas cerradas y a espaldas de la gente. Creemos que ninguna discusión o ninguna solución acerca de la Amazonía y la protección de los bosques y los pueblos amazónicos puede darse a espaldas de la gente y sin la participación de aquellos y aquellas que han defendido a la Amazonía brasileña del gobierno extractivista, racista y colonial del presidente Jair Bolsonaro. Ninguna solución se hace a espaldas de la gente, sino con ella. Hacemos un llamado a los representantes de Estados Unidos para que esta cumbre climática no sirva de complacencia ante lo poco que se ha avanzado y que repita los viejos libretos. Creemos que una manera de asumir el liderazgo frente a este grave problema es comprometer a los países más ricos en el financiamiento público y no reembolsable a los países más vulnerables. La justicia climática no es una opción, es el camino. Hoy el compromiso climático tiene retos concretos. Reducir la alta dependencia a los combustibles fósiles como el carbón y el petróleo. Proteger la vida de los defensores y defensoras ambientales, quienes están enfrentando en los territorios el avance de las políticas extractivas de los gobiernos, así como el de las economías ilegales y criminales, como el narcotráfico, la tala y la minería. Asimismo, está enfrentar la pandemia. Sobre este último punto, creemos que es urgente e importante que los gobiernos presionen a los laboratorios farmacéuticos para que liberen las patentes de las vacunas. La vida y salud de millones de personas no puede estar al servicio del lucro.
The Amazon Fund, created by President Joe Biden, of course, has a clear goal of reducing deforestation to zero, restoring large areas of the Amazon forest, particularly southern Amazon, the southern Amazon is under the risk of a tipping point of turning 56% of the Amazon forest into a degraded savanna. However, we have to think in another possibility, a very important, perhaps the most important possibility that such Amazon Fund could support, which is to create a sustainable development model and an innovative forest-based bioeconomy for the Amazon. We call it a standing forest bioeconomy. The value, economic value of Amazon products, multitude of Amazon products, is much, much larger than the current economics of the Amazon, which is replacing the forest, seeing zero value in the forest, in the biodiversity, and replacing mostly by cattle and by some crops. A few products today, like acai berry, cocoa, Brazil nuts, already show a tremendous potential. They are improving the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of people from the Amazon. So we need to create this new bioeconomy. And the Amazon Fund by President Joe Biden could have a very important initial element to create this science, technology, innovation basis for such development, to uncover the value of thousands of products that still we do not know. We have to discover new uses, and we have to create new industries. We have to industrialize the potential of this new bioeconomy, to add value, to improve the livelihoods of the Amazonian people, to create a new economy. So the fund should support the creation of a standing forest bioeconomy for the Amazon.
Hello, my name is Shia Bastida, and I'm an 18-year-old climate justice activist. Today we have heard about the importance of protecting the Amazon rainforest because of its ability to maintain global climate stability, as it acts as a carbon sink and a regulator of the water cycle, among other things. It is also very important to emphasize and re-emphasize that in order to take care of the Amazon rainforest, we must protect the indigenous communities that take care of it. Indigenous people's philosophy is to take care of Mother Earth. That reciprocity, that culture, that tradition is something that we need to safeguard, not only for current generations, but for generations in the future. The Youth Climate Justice Movement has been organizing for about the past 2 years to hold our local and international leaders accountable to climate justice solutions. And the Amazon rainforest must be in the front line of protection, not destruction, in the front line of protecting indigenous communities and not giving them away to companies that want profit over people's rights. Me and other youth climate activists around the world are going to demand from our specific leaders that they protect the Amazon rainforest. Specifically me in the US, I will make sure that the Biden administration knows that it is one of our demands that the Amazon rainforest remains protected by protecting the rights of indigenous communities who have the right to be stewards of the land. Thank you so much to everyone for coming to this really amazing event today. As Sylvia Earle once said, each one of us cannot do everything, but all of us can do something. And that's where our power of agency comes in when it comes to protecting Mother Earth. We need to make sure that sanctuaries are protected. And that comes from intersectional, holistic policy that puts people first, that puts the rights of nature first, that recognizes that these two are interlinked. My call to action as a youth climate activist is that we have waited too long already to address the crisis in the Amazon rainforest, which is reflective of the crisis all around the world. We need to step up to a role as protectors of the environment and stewards of the land We need to make it our culture to take care of Mother Earth. It needs to be part of who we are and part of every decision that we make. Kamadi, may peace prevail among us.
Hi, I'm Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the Amazon Climate Forum. We are in the midst of a global climate crisis, poised on the precipice of global climate calamity, and the Amazon is perhaps the most single important terrestrial feature that will decide whether we succeed or fail at avoiding that calamity. Unfortunately, what is going on in the Amazon right now is not good news. Senator Schatz of Hawaii and I wrote a letter to President Bolsonaro asking him to improve his game and to up environmental enforcement. We met with his environmental minister thereafter, Minister Salles, and the Brazilian ambassador. It was not a particularly successful meeting, and that their position was that they were doing wonderfully at protecting the Amazon, and we simply didn't understand. So I think under the Biden administration, we need to make this a diplomatic focus and make sure that our American companies take the supply chain power that they have and make sure that they're not in their supply chains participating in the deforestation that is wreaking havoc in the Amazon. So we have got a lot of work to do. It's important work. I look forward to working with you. We have asked companies to disclose this information and make it part of their reporting. And I hope we can all come together around diplomatic solutions to put pressure on the Bolsonaro administration to improve the way it's behaving in the Amazon and to have supply chains reflect the hazard to all of us from continued deforestation and damage to this most significant area. Thank you very much.
I've never been to the Amazon rainforest, but I know that we all have to work together to stand with the indigenous communities that have protected the forest, which is the heart of the planet, and they've protected it for thousands of years. While these guardians of the forest are under constant assault from a government that sees the richness of the land and its resources as commodities to be mined, drilled, and cut down for profit, it is up to us, the world community, to face our own responsibility in all of this. The wisdom keepers of the rainforest have always known that we all belong to the earth and that we are all responsible in different ways for its health. Many are calling for this to be a time when we consider what the future could look like if the health of the planet, the health of the global economy, and our personal health are seen as all connected. If we begin to emerge from this time with a commitment to forge a new future where opportunities to serve our global well-being and our economic health are finally in partnership, then we will have taken a big step toward forging a better future for all of us. We are all connected now. And perhaps that is what this virus is teaching us, that we are all responsible for each other in ways we hadn't seen before, when we protect ourselves by protecting each other.
Thank you so much. Listening to Barbara's remarks, it came to my attention that on April 24th is her birthday. And on April 22nd and 23rd, President Biden and President Harris will have 40 global leaders of very important countries regarding climate visiting them, even though it will be online, but we'll be together. And I think there's no better birthday gift that, Barbara, you could ask than asking President Biden and President Harris to fulfill the demands that we have in our platform, but even more important, specifically on the Amazon agreements in order to invest in the Amazon, to look into those points we raise so constantly here. One, everyone at the table. Two, justice, adaptation, nature, and carbon. Three, payment for performance. No money ahead before results. And finally, this is a wide approach. It's about environment, it's about health, it's about justice, and it's about technology. And moreover, it's about the future. So I would like, Leila, to end my participation here, honoring the work that was done here. And I heard Barbara never been to the Amazon, so I'll extend to her an invitation to please come. But honoring the work we've did here for the future generations, and reminding the audience that yesterday, 6 youth activists in Brazil initiated a lawsuit against the Brazilian government, which is the first time in the Brazilian history that happens. And as far as I know, probably the first one in the Amazon basin. And they belong to two organizations, one called Engajamundo and the other one Fridays for Future Brazil. So I would like to just end by stating their names and honoring everybody that worked so hard for us to be here today, and at the same time honoring the future through them. Chay Suruí, Marcelo Rocha, Paulo Santos, Thalita Silva, Daniel Holanda, muito obrigado. Thank you very much for your activism, for your wisdom. Here we have white, black, indigenous, all different places of this country coming together saying, we need an ambitious agreement, but we need climate ambition in this country. We need climate justice in this country. So thank you very much. And thank you all from the audience for being with us. Thank you, Amazon Watch. Thank you, Amazon Aid. Thank you, Avaz, Repam, COICA, Fórum Sur Panamazônico. I was honored to be here. And most for me dear, thank you, Artists for Amazonia, on the people of John and Julia, because if we're not them, I certainly would not be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcelo. It's been so great working with you on this event. And I know this is just the beginning of many more events and work that we're going to do together to protect the future. As Shie and Alexandria reminded us about the commitment of youth to protect the future. And they reminded us of the interconnectedness of us all. And so we have to, some of us have been doing this a long time, and, we need that energy. We need that youthful energy to move us forward and give us that hope. Today is my daughter's birthday. And so I'm thinking a lot about just, the future and what we leave our children. And today, I hope, as we hear these words, we are reminded of what's at stake. Really, really what's at stake. And that, some of the scientists said, we're nearing the tipping point, but we're not there yet. We still have time, but not a lot of time. So we need to act now. And when we think of going in next week into a climate summit, making commitments for what we're going to do, what our US administration is going to do to lead, to come back as a global leader for climate justice. And it's important that we say justice, because we need action, but we need it to be just. And we need our phase out and transition away from fossil fuels to be just. We need everyone at the table, the youth. We need women, the women defenders who inspire me every day. We need the elders to continue reminding us about our the urgency and the importance of unity. That's what Cacique Jaime did today. I'm so grateful that he was able to send in that video. We need the scientists, we need the activists, we need the artists to keep us singing, moving, and dancing. We need all of us. We need the people of faith, the spiritual leaders to keep us grounded. We need all of us. And so we're really calling upon you, US policymakers, to respond to the calls, as Gregorio said. The leaders of the Amazon want meetings. This is just the beginning. They want to have direct meetings with the administration to share their proposals, to share the platform that we outlined today, to share the life plan. They want access to vaccines. So with that, I also want to thank everyone for participating, for staying so long. These events, we start off with 10 to 12 people, and then more people want to join, and we have more messages that want to be shared. So thank you all for participating. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to all the co-sponsoring organizations, for my team at Amazon Watch, Artists for Amazonia, Amazon Aid Foundation, AVAZ, the Asamblea Mundial por la Amazonía, the Amazon Assembly, COICA, REPAM, the Pan-Amazon Forum, Foro Social Panamazónico, Abril Indígena, and to John Quigley, Julia J. Posen, and Andrew Miller in particular for your tireless work to make this happen. And we are going to close the event with music from Héctor Vitrago and Artesio Pelados. Thank you so much, and keep hope alive for the Amazon, for our future, for our children. Thank you.
Soñemos un bosque verde. Soñemos un bosque